Hey, y'all. As a growing family, my husband and I love game night, especially when it's Wayfair edition.
Let's do it. You gotta name as many Wayfair furniture and decor categories as you can. Ready? Go.
Sofas, bar stools, beds, ottomans, outdoor seating, bookshelves, kitchen tables, garden sheds, mid-century modern lamps.
Time. Nice. You got 9 out of a lot. Not too bad. Keep practicing by visiting wayfair.com, where you can shop every style for every home.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership one episode at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Hi, Martin. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I'm kind of recovering from a man's cold. You know how that is, huh?
That is the worst thing that could happen to a human being. And
Not just a
sorry,
regular
so
cold,
sorry.
but a man's cold.
Yeah, that is the gravest illness that exists. So my heart goes out to you and your wife.
Thank you, especially my wife.
Also joined by LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. Hey, LJ, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing, Robin?
Very well, very well. I don't know what it is, but it feels like spring is coming. I know it's not. Logically, spring doesn't start till April in Montreal. It's only February. We still have a while to go, but there's something, I don't know, fresh in the air. It feels good. There was some sunshine this week.
Yeah, when the sun's out, actually, the sun feels stronger. It feels hotter.
Yeah. There's something, it's like 2 degrees outside this week, and I saw people out in shorts walking their dog. Like, Canadians are crazy.
Yeah, desperation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's get to our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-790-0800 will receive cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, in Quebec, what is the typical length of a residential lease? If you think you know it, 514-790-0800, and please include your name. What is in the news this week? Well, I saw on Instagram when LJ posted a reel, inflation is down to 2.3%. So, guys, what impact, if any, will this have on interest rates? We still have a while until the next announcement from the Bank of Canada. It's on March 18th, I believe.
That is correct. We definitely have a bit of time to go before that.
So the main reason that we saw inflation come down were gasoline prices fell. So it helped overall inflation come down. That said, some costs, especially shelter, and I don't know if you've been to the grocery store, and we talk about it a lot, but doing groceries these days is a painful exercise. So they're still rising, but at a slower pace. So shelter and groceries are still rising, but at a slower pace. So inflation is moving in the right direction. That's good news for borrowers. As we mentioned, we are entering a period of what we feel is going to be rate stability, with now the possibility of perhaps a small decrease later in the year. So what does that mean for mortgage rates? So variable rate mortgages, if the bank holds rates steady, variable rates will remain stable. If the bank cuts rates later this year, payments will go down. Fixed rates, as we always mention, are driven by the bond market. And so lower inflation can push bond yields down, which can slowly bring fixed rates down. So, but what we're seeing and what we're telling our clients is for the rest of the year, pretty much what we see today is what we're going to see for most of the year. And maybe at the tail end of 2026, we might see a rate decrease, but I wouldn't count on it right now.
So inflation being down to 2.3% is so funny because, man, I wish we were forced to do economics classes again as an adult, because I've seen some folks online saying, if inflation is down, why are things still getting more expensive? Inflation is the rate at which prices increase. So if inflation is down to 2.3%, that means prices are increasing by 2.3%. So it doesn't mean that prices are down. So there's a bit of a disconnect there, right, LJ?
100%. We would need negative inflation for prices to be going down. And the other important thing to talk about here is that the 2.3% was also in comparison to a January 2025 when there was a GST rebate. So we would have to take 5% off everything to really have a more concrete sample size, which means that I'm actually pretty interested to see how the months of March and moving forward are going to look and shape up when we no longer have that GST rebate in the actual calculation of our inflation.
Oh,
But
interesting.
truth be told, when prices go up, when do we ever see them come back down?
They don't.
Okay.
Never. Never. Although, you know what? The one thing I will say is that fruit and vegetables fluctuate, excuse me, because they get cheaper when they're in season, right? When you're buying local produce. Like, for example, Peyton right now is obsessed with watermelon. Being that it's February, watermelon is not in season. So I keep buying these tiny, tiny watermelons that are the sizes of like grapefruits, and they cost me $7.99. But I know in the summer I could get a giant watermelon bigger than my head for like $3.99. So that's the only time you see prices come down is usually with produce, actually. Okay, the big question now is how long should you renew your mortgage for? Things are interesting right now with global politics. Things are interesting with local economics. So is it smarter to renew for 3 years or 5 years? Martin, I'm sure you get asked this question a million times a day.
So I'll go further than that. So I think the real decision isn't necessarily just 3-year or 5-year fixed. It's also fixed versus variable, especially since variable rates are currently lower than fixed rates currently. So if we're looking at the options, so let's say we look at 3, 5, and variable. So if you choose 3-year fixed, it's a shorter commitment. Lets borrowers renew sooner if rates fall. Good option if you believe that rates will decline in the next couple of years because you're not bound by it over a longer period of time. 5-year, which 85% of mortgages in Canada are 5-year fixed, amortized over 25 years. It locks in stability and predictable payments, protects you if rates should rise again over the 5-year term. It's good for people who value peace of mind. You want to know exactly what you're going to pay on a month-to-month basis over the next 5 years. But it comes with less flexibility because you're locked in for 5 years. So if rates come down, you may have to break your mortgage. And if you break your mortgage, then you're going to be confronted with some penalties. So they'll keep that in mind. And variable rates. So if we predict that rates are going to come down at the tail end of 2026, so it's a good option because not only are they lower now, but they could be even lower at the end of 2026. But and if you're signing now, you're going to be signing at the lowest rate possible. But they're best suited for people that are okay with a certain level of risk. So if we just quickly look at all three, if you're expecting rate cuts, 3-year fixed or variable are a great option. You want certainty, it's 5-year fixed. And if you're comfortable with some risk and you want the lowest starting rate today, variable, although I've always been a fixed guy, variable would probably be the way I would go. And the other advantage with variables, you can always lock into fixed. You can't go the opposite way. If you're locked into fixed, you can't go to variable because then you have to break your mortgage. So it's less about picking a term. It's more about choosing the right strategy for your comfort level and your outlook on rates. And we all know we don't have a crystal ball. So everything that we say today could change tomorrow. So the decision has to be taken based on the rates that you see today and what your outlook will be over the next year and what your comfort level is in terms of your monthly payments.
When you talk about penalties, because this is something I think people don't realize, they decide to break their 5-year mortgage, let's say 3 years in, because they want to switch to a variable rate or they want to get a better interest rate. What kind of penalties are we talking about on a fixed rate mortgage?
Well, it depends how soon in your 5-year term that you break. The sooner you break, the higher the penalty. And what the big banks use is called the interest rate differential. And each of the banks calculate it a different way. But we had a client that had just signed for a mortgage. It was a significant mortgage. And she realized that she had a lot of credit card debt and she wanted to address it. So she called us up and said, "Can I refinance my mortgage?" And I said, "Absolutely. But you better check your penalty to make sure that the math makes sense for you to refinance currently." And when she checked with one of the big banks that she had her mortgage with, the penalty was almost $20,000. So although she was carrying a ton of credit card debt, the math just didn't work. So our recommendation to her was try to pay down your credit card debt as much as you can. And you're going to have to stay the course because it's just not worth breaking your mortgage currently to pay down your debts.
So in that case, you would wait out your term and refinance at the end when you don't have to pay $20,000 in penalties.
Well, that's just it. And, a lot of the big banks are the worst for penalties. And you really, like a lot of people will call us up and say, what's your best rate? And the first thing we say is rate is one thing, but the conditions attached to your mortgage is another. And one of the big things that people don't take into consideration are the penalties because life changes and you just never know. So 5 years is a long period of time. You go, nothing's going to change. We're going to stay in the house for 5 years. And all of a sudden, boom, you have a couple kids. Boom, all of a sudden decide to get divorced. Boom, something happens in your life and you need to break your mortgage. And all of a sudden you're confronted with a massive penalty that you didn't take into consideration because you wanted those 5 basis points less on the rate when you signed for your mortgage.
I was looking at a commercial deal with a client recently, and he was considering potentially selling the property, and we were discussing if the mortgage would have to be assumed by the future buyer or not. And I said, hey, let's run the scenario. What if somebody doesn't assume your mortgage and you have to pay the penalty? So we called the bank. This is roughly on a $1.6 million mortgage for a commercial property. The penalty was $200,000.
Oh, it's crazy.
Oh my
Crazy. It's
God.
crazy. It's crazy.
So it's really important to understand what you're signing, what the conditions are, and how attached you are to this property and to this mortgage before you get into it to understand what the potential repercussions are going to be associated to it.
Because you know also the benefit.
And I'm sorry, Robin. A lot of people get these mortgage commitments sent to them by us or by the bank, and they actually don't read them before they sign them. And then they'll call you up 6 months later and said, well, I didn't know. Well, I said, did you read the commitment? Because we try to point out everything that they need to look at inside the commitment, and they go, no, I didn't read it. Well, I'm sorry, you signed it.
And the notary points out everything with you as well when you go back
Absolutely,
in
and
with
they
them.
go-
So
Yeah.
you have 2 opportunities to go through it. Well, that is the benefit of working with experts like LJ and Martin. They can help you read that fine print and know exactly what it is you're getting into. If you are interested, by the way, in purchasing a multiplex, maybe you want to let that passive income roll in, LJ is the expert that you want to work with. Give the Plex Doctor a call at 514-709-6397. You can also visit their website at plexdr.com. Still to come, if you're thinking about downsizing, LJ has some advice for you after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL. I'm Robin. That's Martin. That is LJ. Is it still possible to downsize? I think it is because the lady who runs the home daycare my daughter attends is downsizing. She just sold her house so she could move into a smaller house. So people are still trying to downsize, but a big complaint is that you sell your big house to buy a smaller house and you end up paying the same every month. So is it really worth it? LJ, are people still coming to you looking to downsize? And is it possible to save money by downsizing?
It definitely is. People are still looking, obviously, chapters of life shift and seasons of life shift. And with that is going to come a change in environment, and it happens for different reasons. The idea of, is it going to be less expensive? It's not as less expensive as it used to be. It's not as much of a bargain. However, when you factor in the additional maintenance costs, repairs, snow removal, general just upkeep of a property, there's a lot of other things that you have to take into consideration before making this decision that ultimately make it worthwhile. The peace of mind that you get from going into a well-managed condo building after being in a single-family home, especially if you're alone, you don't have to deal with snow removal anymore, with cleaning up the leaves, with tending to the garden, potential roof leaks, all the stuff that comes with home ownership, whether we like it or not. Obviously, it's just part of having your own property. You get to forget about that stuff and relegate it to the syndicate or the condo board. Like Martin is super well and super familiar with all the joys that come with being the manager of the condo board. But nevertheless, there's a bit of peace of mind that comes with that, obviously. And even if you're going to start traveling a bit more, spending more time outside of Montreal, you want to become a snowbird possibly, it's a lot easier to lock up a condo for 2 to 3 months, even potentially 5 to 6 months, and not worry about a thing than it is to lock up a house for 3 to 6 months. So is there a potential savings? Yeah, I believe there is still potential savings. Obviously, you can't expect to go from a 2,000 square foot house into a 2,000 square foot condo and get a significant savings. We're going to have to downsize your life. But if you're ready to move into a smaller apartment, whether that's maybe 1,000 to 1,200 square feet, 2 to 3 bedroom apartment, and really just downsize your life because you don't need as much stuff with you, obviously, then there's definitely great opportunities, especially if you're staying in a similar neighborhood to where you were already.
I got a comment.
Downsizing. Go ahead.
Quick comment. So ask yourself, how much of the house do you actually really use? And so are you staying in a big house because you want to keep up with the Joneses? Or are you actually taking a step back and saying, how much of this house do I really use? I use the bedroom, I use the kitchen, I use the den. And then the rest of the house is served for storage. So your basement is full of stuff because LJ just mentioned stuff. And those are all those other bedrooms that you don't use is just storing furniture for you. So sometimes you take a step back and go, am I staying in this house to keep up with the Joneses, or am I actually really using this house, and do I need this much house? And if the answer is no, then downsizing makes perfect sense. It frees up a lot of liquidity, and maybe actually you sell your big house and you buy a small house and you don't have a mortgage. You become mortgage free. So all those mortgage payments can be used for travel, to buy that fancy car you always wanted, to join that golf club you always wanted to join, whatever it is. It's just most people, and I can use this as an example. We have a client that lives in a massive house, and I went over to their house, beautiful house, but they had 4 kids. They've all moved out, and they're just 2 of them in there. And the thing is cavernous. I mean, it's beautiful, but they go, oh well, we like to have the family come over. Well, how often does the family come over? Does it come over once a year? Do you really need that much house? And they're hemorrhaging because they can't make the payments on it, but they want to stay there.
That's a huge thing. A lot of people want to keep the property for the holidays or for when the kids are going to come into town to visit. And if you were to take those funds and downsize and put your kids up in a hotel or an Airbnb or whatever it is for the 2 times a year they're going to come down to visit, it is a lot more economical. It'll make a lot more sense. It'll probably make for an easier dynamic. You're even better off if you want to rent a massive chalet or cottage for that family week when everyone's together, to get everybody together but still have the appropriate spaces. It would make a lot more financial sense if you can really just part ways with the having to keep the bedroom of all of your kids who live in this house at one point in time.
Yeah, make your kids come get your stuff.
Like,
My dad showed up not when we first bought our house. My dad was like, cool, you have a house now, you can take your stuff back. And he showed up with boxes of homework from high school and yearbooks and journals and diaries from when I was a teenager. He was like, it's yours now, deal with it.
but it's not only the mortgage payments on a big house, it's everything else. It's the municipal and school taxes, it's electricity, it's gas, it's upkeep. It's insanity sometimes when you're actually using 3 rooms in the house.
Yeah, I saw somebody on the local Chattagee Facebook group comparing what they pay monthly for hydro because they have electric heating, and they realized for a similar square footage home, they were paying like $100 more per month than other people. So everyone's like, well, you got to look at your insulation, maybe redo your windows because you've got some issues, obviously. Well, that's another expense that you're going to have to worry about. So those are
Maybe you
things you
should
just
just
don't have to worry
move.
about. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
because it's funny. You live in a condo or you live in a townhouse, and especially if you live in a townhouse, you've got insulation on your right and your left, right? So you're not in a
Yeah.
single family dwelling that's exposed to the elements on all 4 sides. So basically, your heating automatically goes down when you're in a townhouse, and the same thing goes with a condo. My sister lives in Boston, and she's got a condo in a high rise. She goes, Martin, I get so much sunlight, I don't heat. I don't pay any heating during the winter because the building is well insulated and I get a lot of sunlight. So I literally do not heat my apartment.
Wow. What are some of the biggest surprises that homeowners face when they come to you, LJ, and they're like ready to downsize and they start looking at, let's say, condo prices? Are they surprised by what they see when they start searching?
They're definitely surprised, and I think the main reason for that is that a lot of them haven't looked at housing or condo costs in the last 15 to 20 years. And if we compare prices of 2006 to 2026, and they're seeing prices that are more expensive than what they paid for their home 20 years ago, there's definitely a bit of sticker shock initially. Now, once we've taken a few seconds to obviously analyze what their home is now worth and what the advantages of being in a condo, I think it starts to make a little bit more sense. But I was watching even a TV show last night, and there's always the what we call the immigrant parent price, where they get so scared when you tell them the price of something in today, and people inevitably start lowering the price that they tell them to not make them feel bad about what this is. And the example was like a tennis lesson that he told his dad was worth $40 instead of $80, and even the $40 was a crazy price for this tennis lesson. But when you kind of take the time to actually analyze what you're getting, what the evaluation, how the appreciation of this asset's going to continue to work, the fact that you're staying in the market, it is an investment. We're not just moving over to potentially start paying rent and start depleting your assets at this point. The valuation is going to continue to make sense, and you're going to have an asset. You're going to have a nest egg, like Martin said. You might actually have it mortgage free, and you're actually going to be able to enjoy it, just taking care of the insurance, taxes, condo fees, and focus on every other aspect of your life that you've been putting on hold for as long as you have been.
So, what should homeowners be doing when they're thinking about downsizing, maybe in the next few years? They know they're going to be retiring in 2 years. They'd like to sell the house and downsize. Is there something they can be doing today to prepare, whether that's financially, strategically? I assume start getting rid of stuff is probably step one.
What they can be doing is, first of all, yes, you always want to declutter the property. Understand what are your needs, what are your wants. After the home's been decluttered, it's probably gonna be a fresh coat of paint. Is usually gonna be good. If you've been at home for 10 plus years, it's probably due for a fresh paint job. And then beyond that, it's scheduling a meeting with myself, with Martin, so we can understand what your situation actually looks like, what are going to be the best options for you, and where we go from here.
If you're not sure if now is the right time to downsize, give LJ a call. He can help you figure it out and plan for your future. 514-500-4040. He will help you figure it all out. Coming up, what can you do if you own your own home but feel house poor? Martin has the answer after the news. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. My name's Robin Flynn, joined by LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. I own my own home, but I feel house poor. All my money is going to the mortgage payments and the maintenance, and I feel like I have nothing left over. What are some practical steps that people can take to fix this problem, Martin?
Okay, so we hear this all the time. And here's the truth. Most people who feel house poor didn't buy the wrong house. They structured their financing incorrectly, or as I mentioned earlier in the show, life changed. So today, let's try and fix that. So before you panic sell, before you drain your savings, before you tap out all your credit cards, I came up, and there are many, and I know that Robin's going to roll her eyes when I tell her, I came up with 9 different options. So we're going to go through them very quickly. But there are 9 obvious options or obvious things you can do to address this. First, number 1, renewal is your leverage moment. If your mortgage is coming up for renewal, this is the opportunity. Most people just sign what their bank sends them. My advice, our advice, don't. Negotiate the rate, compare fixed to variable, adjust the amortization, shop around. According to the CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, borrowers who shop at renewal often secure better terms. 2, before touching your mortgage, ask yourself, is this really a mortgage problem or is this a spending problem? Starbucks every day. So cancel those unused subscriptions. Renegotiate your car and home insurance. Dissect your credit card bills. It's not very glamorous, but there's always money to be found. 3, extend your amortization. If you need some breathing room, extending amortization lowers monthly payments. Yes, you'll pay more interest over time, but if the priority is cash flow today, this will work. 4, refinance the mortgage. Refinancing means replacing your mortgage, often with a lower rate, longer amortization, and a better structure. It can immediately lower your payments, but as we mentioned before, check the penalties. Breaking a mortgage can be expensive. Refinance only when the math works. 5, consolidate high interest debt. If you're carrying 19 to 20%, 22% credit card debt, and your mortgage is at 4%, rolling high interest debt into your mortgage can lower interest, simplify payments, and reduce stress. But remember, you're turning short-term debt into long-term secured debt. It fixes cash flow, but you need to show some discipline. Don't go out and reload your credit cards after you refinance. Use a HELOC, but be careful. A home equity line of credit can lets you borrow against your home. It carries lower interest rates than secured credit cards. And then it carries lower rates than unsecured credit, i.e. credit cards. But a HELOC needs to be used as a short-term tool and have a strategy to pay it off. Make your house pay you. Do you have an extra room? Do you have a basement apartment? Do you have a secondary suite? Rent and generate revenue by your own home. 8, reverse mortgages. If you're 55 and older, this could be an option. You can access tax-free equity, no mandatory monthly payments. You get to stay in your home. Best for retirees who are asset rich, cash poor. And finally, we mentioned it before, downsize strategically. Sometimes the honest answer is this: you bought too much house or you're living in too much house. Downsizing can free up equity, reduce property taxes, lower utility bills. There's less to pay in a smaller home. So, in summary, we'll go through them really quickly. 1, negotiate renewal. 2, fix spending leaks. 3, extend amortization. 4, refinance if the math works. 5, consolidate high interest debt. 6, use a HELOC. 7, generate rental income. 8, consider a reverse mortgage. 9, downsize if necessary.
An interesting option when you mentioned renting out a spare room or a basement option is also if you have a pool. There are so many options now, kind of like, renting if you own your own car, you can rent it out to somebody for them to use. There's like Airbnb for your pool now. I think it's called Swimply or something like that, where you
Well, it's
can
funny.
rent your pool by the hour and people can come use it in the summer. So you can help your pool pay for itself.
You can rent your driveway. There's
Yeah,
there's
parking
an
spot.
app that I just came across called Parking Angel, and if you don't have enough parking for whatever amount of cars you have, you can go on Parking Angel and find parking spaces available in your area. So there are
Yep.
always ways of generating extra income. So whether it's a pool, parking, extra room, why not have your house work for you?
Or storage. If you've got room in your garage and somebody wants to have somewhere to store their winter tires, that's an option.
I would just be very cautious with a lot of these. Pools give me insurance nightmares. God forbid
For
that
sure.
to happen. So I'd be very cautious before letting strangers use your pool where you would be taking responsibility and have any potential liability associated to that. Driveway parking, a little bit less concerning, but again, don't forget that potentially you're going to have a car that maybe has a mechanical issue and might have an oil leak onto your driveway, and now you're going to be responsible for cleaning up this oil leak onto your driveway that might potentially come with some contamination association to it. This would be very extreme worst case scenario. And then finally with storage, if you are going to rent out a portion of your garage for storage, be very careful who you're renting to and what they are storing in the property. There are lots of questions on a seller's declaration asking about hazardous materials, chemical materials, drugs, all sorts of things that, like TSA, you want to know exactly what's being packed in your bags and in your property before we're moving forward on any sort of transactions. So while these are all great options, I'd be very cautious who we do it to. I have seen sometimes people rent out a garage in a multiplex property to a local contractor. They store their tools and their materials there, type of thing. That seems to work well, but really more of like commercial rental. Beyond that, again, all great ideas. Just be very cautious and make sure you do your due diligence before doing anything.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's say you've made one of these decisions and you've got a little bit more cash flow. I feel like the danger here is that people are going to spend that extra money. You talked about refinancing and then people load up their credit cards again. I assume you can't refinance again to pay down that debt once again. So you have to be very, very diligent, Martin. How do you sort of coach your clients to make good choices after you help them out of a sticky situation?
Well, we tell them that, the reason that you can refinance is that there's some equity in your house. And when you're refinancing, you have to requalify for that mortgage. So if 2 years down the road, you call us back and say, you know what, we spent a little too much on the credit cards. Can we refinance again? More than likely, you won't have the capacity to requalify, or there won't be enough equity in the house. So refinancing is a sort of a get out of free jail card that you can use once, but don't call us back in 2 years. So you have to demonstrate a little bit of discipline. I mean, people can get jammed up, totally get it. And, refinance if it's the right move for you. But after you've refinanced and you've cleared out your debts, then you have to show some discipline and you have to live within your means.
That's the hard part.
It is definitely. Because actually,
Salaries aren't.
but LJ mentioned it, often you say, okay, what do I want and what do I really need? And once you differentiate between your wants and your needs, you really realize you don't need that much, but you want a lot, especially in North America where we're consumer driven and we spend like it's
Yeah.
going out of style. But do you really need to change that car after 3 years? Can you change it after 5? Do you really need a new pair of skis every year? Do you really need that jet ski? Do you really, and it just goes on and on because a lot of that stuff can be rented. Here, I'll give you a perfect example. Motorcycles. How often do you actually ride your motorcycle if you own a motorcycle? You can rent a motorcycle for the weekend. And at the end of the day, it'll be a lot cheaper to rent the bike for 3 days than to own the bike after you paid for insurance, maintenance, and everything else that goes along with a motorcycle. Sometimes it's just easier just to rent something than to actually buy it.
I know sometimes with credit card debt, it's not necessarily a motorcycle purchase or, things like that that get you into a sticky situation. It's tons of little small things. I didn't have enough money to, pay for my kid's froyo day. We'll just take it on the credit card. I have to buy my kid a new snowsuit because she outgrew her other snowsuit this winter. That happened to me last year. 2 snow jackets in 1 year. Horrible. Didn't plan on that. Throw it on the credit card because we didn't budget for it. Those little things really start to add up quickly. So there are other options than just throwing everything on the credit card, right? Like maybe bank a mom and dad, ask grandma to buy the new snowsuit instead of throwing it on the Visa. There's other options to explore,
As
definitely.
long as mom and dad are not putting it on their credit cards.
Yeah, exactly. No interest. We don't want to pay interest on things.
It's horrible.
Okay, to find out more about your lending options and to figure out what your solutions are if you're feeling house poor, get in touch with Fred and Martin by visiting their website, fredandmartin.com. Coming up, our property of the week plus the answer to our trivia question of the week. The answer after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. I'm Robin. That's Martin. That is LJ. As always, we choose a property each week to highlight for you. LJ, what do you have for us?
Looking for the perfect family home in Dollar des Ormeaux? Welcome to 112 Rue Caruso, a beautifully updated 4-bedroom split level on a quiet crescent. Enjoy a renovated kitchen with granite counters and island seating, a stunning main bathroom with heated floors, a finished basement, and an attached heated garage. Set on a large fenced lot with northwest exposure, you'll love the late afternoon and evening sun. Perfect for relaxing or entertaining. Offered at $719,000. Stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m. Marina from our team will be there to show you around. Being a DDO native myself, my go-tos in the area for food include Maiko Sushi, and lately I've been going to Pigeon Club Cafe regularly right across the street from Fairview.
I love that Pigeon Club Cafe location. I've been to many. I was at the one on Monkland recently. What a cool spot. Really awesome Mediterranean food, really great decor and vibe. They've got little private rooms too if you need to have events. Very, very cool.
What's the tagline for the coffee? We serve the worst coffee on
World's
earth.
worst coffee.
World's worst coffee. That's it. It's actually delicious.
Not though. Yeah,
No, it's
exactly.
not.
I'm like, I get lattes there all the time. They're really good.
Hey, I got
Okay.
a question for you about Dollard. There's always a differentiation between old Dollard and new Dollard. Someone says to you, "Oh, I live in Dollard," and the automatic answer is, "Oh, do you live in New Dollard or Old Dollard?" What's the difference between the two?
I've never heard a direct distinction like that, having grown up there. The biggest distinctions growing up, are you in the West Park area? Are you east or west, right? So you have east, west, and central DDO. If you are looking at older or newer Dollard, I mean, if we go to the Radissons, if the Baffins area, that's a bit of a newer area of Dollard. If we go closer to maybe the North Cliffs, that's also a newer area. But beyond that, the more typical historic was really central, east, and west were the 3 breakdowns of the different types of DDO. Where do you live in DDO? That was what most people were looking for.
Well, is there a section of DDO that was built up in the last few years, and then is there a section that is more mature?
The last few years would be a bit of a stretch. It was when I was a child at this point, but you have the sections of DDO that were built in the 60s and 70s, and then you have the sections of DDO that were built in the early 2000s. Those would be kind of the distinctions, but they're all pretty right adjacent to each other. They're all next to each other.
Gotcha.
I'm in DDO often because my nephew plays football for Lakeshore. So he is all over the place to play football, and I always go watch him because it's a lot of fun. Go Cougars! My nephew, he was Rookie of the Year this year, which is a lot of fun.
Congrats.
Yeah. Okay, trivia question of the week brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Our question this week was, in Quebec, what is the typical length of a residential lease? The answer is 12 months. Can you still find a residential official lease in Quebec for less than or more than 12 months? I've never seen that before, LJ.
Yeah, we sometimes do 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. We've done all sorts of terms. We have done 2 years in the past. Even I think the longest one I ever did was a 4-year term at one point. So we've done everything in between.
Interesting. But 12 months is really the standard. Usually it's July 1 to July 1, right? That's your typical.
That is the most common, yes. I'd say that 75% of leases we do are that.
Yeah. So congrats to Megan in Verdun for correctly answering our trivia question of the week. We'll have another one for you next week. That pretty much does it for us for this week. If you have a question for the guys that you'd like to have featured on the show, you can email us at underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. I'm the one that usually checks that email, so you can say, hey, Robin, when you send your email. Appreciate that. Robin with a Y, by the way. You can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where do people go to get in touch with you?
You can find me on my website at ljrealties.com. You can also catch us on all socials with the handles LJ Aguinaga or LJ Realties. You can also feel free to call or text me at 514-500-4040. And if you're looking to free up some of your time, reach out to our property management company, The Plex Doctor, to take over and give you back your time. You can find us at plexdr.com or give my partner Terry a call at 514-709-6397.
Martin, where do people go to reach you and Fred?
And something, that we don't mention very often is that actually Fred and I are both licensed in Quebec and in Ontario. So if you're moving from Ontario, because there are a lot of Ontario listeners that listen to CJAD. And so if you're moving from Ontario into Quebec and you're looking for a mortgage, we can help you. And if you're moving from Quebec to Ontario, we can help you. So the best way to reach us is through the website. It's fredmartin.com. fredandmartin.com, and Fred should be back early March, and he will say it a third time, fredandmartin.com.
Yes, he's enjoying beautiful Milan in the Olympics, the Winter Olympics underway right now, which is fun. If you missed anything, you can listen to this show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a wonderful Sunday.